Hello, Melissa Crook here. Welcome back to the Feel podcast this week. I have for you today taking a trauma informed approach with Beth Sandlin. And the ways to engage with this episode are as follows. Are there unprocessed traumas in your body you've thought about lately? Take the time to work through your body through the trauma. Your body will tell you. Pay attention to her, trust her, work your mind through it, and process what you need in order to heal properly. And Beth is going to have some really great resources to offer you today that you may have not thought about before. So we hope that these are helpful ways to engage with today's episode, taking a trauma informed approach with Beth Sandlin. Thanks so much for being with us. Hello, and welcome back to the Field Podcast this week. I'm Melissa Crook, your host, and I've got a friend here with me today, Beth Sandlin. We met initially via Podmatch, and I was able to bring her onto our radio show last spring. And that was such a great opportunity because at the time, I was scheduled out on the podcast, but I knew I had some themes on the radio show that Beth's work and just her journey would connect so well with. So you're going to get 2 doses of Beth in our resources, and both are going to be great assets to you. And they're going to be different angles of getting to know her and understanding her work, and it embodies so much of what we talk about here on the network, which is why she's such a good fit in multiple places. But I'm so thankful to have her back with me for the podcast side. Beth describes herself as hilarious, fun, and light, and she is adaptable, and she likes to meet people where they are and really comes at things with a what can we do attitude rather than letting time and space and attitude limitations get in the way, and finds that that's an empowering way. So she's an empowerer. It's a word I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use that word. And this is going to really come through all of these things today as we go through the talking points and you learn more about her story, and how she helps women live well holistically. Beth Sandlin, welcome to the Feel Podcast.
Thank you so much. And I honestly don't know if I can live up to that intro. So full disclaimer, by hilarious, I don't mean I'm a stand-up comedian. I just mean I like to keep things really light. And very often I find myself much more hilarious than other people do. So take that with a grain of salt.
I can wholeheartedly relate to that because I will say something funny. I will crack myself up. I will look at my husband and I'll be like, I got jokes. Where are you? And he's just like, you're funny because you think you're so funny. So I can wholeheartedly relate to that. But like, hey, whatever makes us laugh. Laughter is good for us. So that's good. It's part of our health, which goes nicely into talk to me about prioritizing self-care in your life. Your journey with that, because the work you do is very self-care focused, but not just physically, holistically. But talk to me about your journey with that and how you got to the space you are today where you are helping others with that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my biggest wake-up calls, I can reference when I had cancer at the age of 20, and yet there was another big wake-up call that connected me into why being healthy and being proactive is really important. And yet life got in the way once I had kids and working full time. It was after my husband and I took our first ever beach vacation away from our 2 young kids. And it was an absolutely incredible experience. And it was like the moment we stepped off the plane back to our real world, it just all vanished. It's like, did that even happen? And I realized I cannot wait every 5-10 years to take this incredible vacation where, I get away from it all-inclusive resort, to feel amazing and to find joy in life. And that's really when I evaluated, well, what can I do? Going to take myself less seriously? And yes, being proactive with self-care is really important. And sometimes it's big and extravagant, like a vacation. More often than not, it is those everyday small steps that we take, like drinking a little
Mhm.
bit more water. If you're a night owl like me, trying to get to bed on time so you have more energy the next day so you can then do more self-care strategies. And so that has really kind of stood out, those two elements. One kind of started with cancer,
Mhm.
but what connected me to the joy, which untaps
Mhm.
motivation for so many people I work with, is realizing I cannot wait for that, bucket list trip to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're so guilty of that. And I've heard the phrase a couple of times, and I think it's really powerful. And it's something I'm trying more and more to put into my life is live the kind of life you don't need a vacation from. And that sounds
Mm.
simplistic, but it can sometimes just come down to, have I considered lately, have I done anything this week that nourishes me? Have I taken one moment to do something that makes me feel light, that brings me joy, that makes me laugh? And so I think it's, stopping and looking at the time we already have to implement those little things. So yes, your responsibilities are still going to be there. I mean, and most of us can't live on vacation all the time, but we can create lives that are more healthy and focused on not just the grind every day. And I think that's a really important wake up call. But we get going in these modes and keep moving, especially when we've got kids and jobs and things, and it's really easy to just check the things off the list. And that's it's such a good reminder to have the spaces like, wait a minute, I cannot do this to myself. I gotta step back and make sure that I'm nourishing myself more than just when I go on this vacation. This is not sustainable. And I don't feel good. And I want to feel, and I don't want to not, I don't want to not feel good. So thank you for that. We talked about this on the radio show, and this can come into play really well in everyday life, but also in the work you do. You work in a Pilates format that's not just physical, but it's trauma informed. It's a full holistic experience. So within that, we talked about setting boundaries and knowing like the boundaries of your own body versus trying to do things that maybe your instructor or somebody's asking you to do, but you're trying to please them, or you don't want to, you're trying to push yourself. But you will also have to stop and think, oh, I need to trust my body and listen to my body and be able to set a boundary and say, okay, when my body says X, I'm going to do Y. So that's one example of a boundary that we talked about in the radio show. But talk to me about your journey with boundaries in general. So you talked about coming back from this vacation and realizing, all right, this, we got to make some changes here. So did you start setting just boundaries around your time, creating space for you to have those moments to care for yourself? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely around my time, I would say. And it's interesting because even though I have boundaries, I'm also extremely adaptable at the same time. So when I was working full time, yes, my lunch hour was typically or when I was going to work out for a portion of that. And that was at 11 o'clock because I wanted to attend an 11 o'clock class. Well, if a meeting happened to be at that time, have to be a little flexible that today we're going to be shifting things around. And the same is true whether it's a work deadline or you have kids. We know that we have to shuffle things around. And sometimes in that shuffle, we end up getting lost. And what happens is that, say that we had a really busy day. For instance, I'm ramping up to a season here where Saturdays are competition days. So I'll be gone out of the house all day long with my kid. I love it, but I'm not really going to be prioritizing working out during that time. But what I do prioritize is, there's a break right now. Let's go on a little walk. Not just sit here the entire time. Let's get a little bit of movement. So I think just being flexible with the schedule is really important. And what's been really valuable as well is because I work out of my home. I have since my kids were teeny tiny. It just was more realistic for me. And at first, when they were very young, well, they'd come downstairs with me and sometimes play with my large and small balls and resistance bands. I mean, they had a lot of fun. And then it started getting into them needing help with things because they got a little bit older. And they realized that I kept getting interrupted for things that weren't a priority at that point in time. Now, they wanted it done right then, but it wasn't an emergency. And so we need to sparse that out. You may cross this boundary of do not interrupt me if it's an emergency. I will 100% quit what I'm doing. But if it's like, hey, I need help with my homework and it was because they didn't prepare or because they just want it done now and they can't wait 20 minutes, well, I'm going to take time to prioritize myself. And I found that this is incredibly helpful. One, because it sets whether it's our children or our coworkers up for success. Like they know that we have boundaries and that it's going to be mutually beneficial. And why it's mutually beneficial is when you give yourself the time away from your to-do list, it actually helps you go back in with more passion, clarity, and joy. And this is something now which is so incredible. We have research studies that show that when people have a consistent workout program, yes, it's amazing for physical benefits. It also helps improve mood. It also helps with concentration and focus. All of those elements help our days become easier. And so I find that kind of just how much working out can do. And then layering on top, when do we turn up the dial of intensity? When do we turn that down? You mentioned that before, listening to the boundary of your body, when to push, when to scale back. That's really something that I found as people work out longer, they tune into that wisdom, that little whisper of a voice, they become more in tune with it and they understand that language. It's kind of like, having a toddler and no one else can really understand them very well, but the parents can. You listen to yourself and you will understand that voice within.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a great example. Any of us that are parents know exactly what it is. You've got to be there to be the interpreter from like 18 months old to 2.5 until they can start articulating clear. But that's such a good example. And I really like what you said about that. I will tell you, I have lived this myself. I will get some of my best ideas during or right after a workout when I've had a chance to clear my mind, when I've been really present. I've moved things out of my body and I've made space for something else. It may also happen after I'll do a 10-minute quiet time during the day when I'm feeling very, kind of my body's really intense or jacked up and I just need to settle my nervous system where it's just quiet. I'm not doing anything other than quiet. And so yeah, those refresher times are so valuable and just what it does for your mood. You're not irritable because, oh, I didn't take my lunch break or I didn't get that in and now da 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 da. And you just get mad at people and things instead of like, that's a choice you made within that, or that, and maybe sometimes it requires hard conversations with people to explain, okay, I'm not going to do that but you got to weigh, how am I going to feel if I do this versus if I don't? And there's science behind it now. And it's really clear. We can all feel it and we can all relate to it. But yeah, I think I call it, you got to have those non-negotiables, those lines that just don't get crossed or they'll just keep getting crossed. If you don't do one, make them yourself, but you also have to communicate them. And it's such a good example for your kids, for people that you're leading, for people that you work with. They learn and understand, okay, this is how Beth operates in the world. This is how she interacts. This is when she isn't available. And I can relate to those competition Saturdays. My daughters played club volleyball and AAU basketball, and we would be in gyms a lot. And my husband and I, if the weather was nice, we'd get outside between games and take a little walk and take a breath, go grab some lunch. It still was moving our bodies and getting our minds. And sometimes, and we came in, if it's a very intense competition day or something's bothering you or whatever, so your kids out of sorts or whatever, it helps you be a better parent when you come in and take that time to go in and back and be present with them. So thank you for all of that. And I can relate to so many of those things. And I know our listeners can too. And this goes really nicely because we've kind of talking about it a little bit already, but taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health and our mental health, all these things tie in. And this is going to be a really great opportunity to talk first about your journey with that, because I think having cancer at such a young age, And it just, no, you just don't hear that. You don't hear about 20-year-olds getting diagnosed with cancer very often. And so talk about just the effect that had on you, the fear and all those different things that you have to like move through and move beyond. And also, too, the work you do now is not just physically focused, but it's trauma informed. And so I want to hear how you decided to make that transition to make it,
Mm.
because you not only teach it, you also train others on how to apply this really holistic, healthy method to moving trauma through our bodies, and recognizing how these elements of physical movement aren't just about our physical bodies as well. So that was a lot. So I'm going to give you a chance to speak about all of that now.
I think what having cancer at the age of 20 did was reinforce that we can do a lot for our health, but we can't control everything. And I
Yeah.
say that because I was the only one in my family who was proactively making shifts from what we did in our family for health and wellness, which really wasn't much. Not we didn't work out as a family. My parents didn't model that. They modeled other amazing traits, but not that element of well-being. And so about a
Mm.
year and a half prior, I had started making those shifts. And I remember being
Mm.
in the hospital room, and my whole family's in shock. And this was after a few days. My younger sister said, "How out of everyone in our family did you get cancer?" So it was just this reminder of that I can't do everything to prevent it. But this is what I also know to be true is I went in stronger than if I would have not been working out. And if I
Mm.
would have just been doing absolutely nothing, because the treatment takes a toll. The cancer
Oh,
itself
yeah.
takes a toll. That's why I went in, because I was having impact strange for me at that age. And when I started just moving through that experience, I think it was the first time where it was complete and utter acceptance. There was
Mm.
nothing else to do. The only other option was do not pursue treatment in the hospital for 30 days at a time, or go home and your cancer won't be treated. Those were my two options. And so it
Wow.
was a complete and utter acceptance of a shift from what I was doing prior, what my anticipations were for the next few months and the next many years as well, since it shifted some other things around, and really focusing on what makes sense at this point, like what makes sense in this day at this time. And I tried to get back into working out too soon. And I realized,
Mm.
not right now. During my most intensive treatment, right now it's rest. Given I was not trained as I am now in Pilates and conform practices, I wish someone would have said, well, actually, we can do a little bit of more movement than what I chose to do. But my strategy at the time was like, definitely can't work out like I used to. So I'm just not going to do anything. If I would have had my brain and understanding now, back then, I would have done more movement. That would have helped me recover
Mm.
even more quickly. But it is what it is. So that experience really led me into, that's why I want to keep working out again, because after I
Mm.
got out of my inpatient treatment, I couldn't hold my nephew for longer than 30
Mm.
seconds. I started shaking and sweating. Like I just could not physically hold him. I didn't have the stamina for that.
Mm.
Even just trying to walk out of the hospital, I fainted. And I had to, check, is everything okay? Yes. Okay. Now you have to be wheeled out of the hospital because you don't have the endurance just to even walk. And those two things seem pretty extreme, and they are. And yet I know a lot of people who have the more subtle impacts. Was one of my motivations to start working out. Like I walked up the stairs at the age of 19 and I realized I was getting really winded. Well, I don't want to get winded after walking up just one flight of stairs. It wasn't running up them. It wasn't many flights, so there's these slow shifts that sometimes happen and we think, oh, my knees are getting a little cranky or my back. And that's just a signal we need to start moving a little bit more. The lack of movement, the inactivity, our body's going to start talking to us louder and louder. And so it's a point of listening to that whisper. And for many years, working out as for physical fitness, and those gains was enough. And I realized once I layered on family and work, I was no longer that college student where, let's face it, the age of 20, being a college student, I could be pretty selfish when it came to self-care. Didn't have a lot of responsibilities. I mean, I worked, sure, but it's different than once you layer on, this is like a quote real job. And I'm a parent now. That's different. It was different for me anyways, not maybe
Yeah,
for everyone, but it was
absolutely.
definitely different for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started just evaluating, why am I, not motivated to working out sometimes, and other times I'm really motivated to working out. No one really explained that to me. And it wasn't until I
Mm.
learned more about trauma with some collaboration work that I was doing at the university. I had taken a full-time job at the university, and I realized, oh, a lot of people have experienced trauma, and I think a lot of my clients have as well. And in the beginning, it really was all about my clients. I did not identify with having experienced trauma because we were talking about interpersonal violence, sometimes known
Mhm.
as domestic violence. And I knew I had not experienced that. And so that was my first understanding of trauma. And the more I took professional development courses on it, read, had collaborations with other offices and organizations, my understanding of what trauma is expanded. And then rather than outward facing, it was also inward facing of, oh, you mean when I had cancer? That was trauma. Oh, you mean when I had that surgery? When I lost my dad? Like all of these elements. And I think where we are now is there's this greater understanding of what trauma is. And it helps us understand, oh, well, that's why maybe I'm getting tension, or there's some resistance, or I'm noticing zoning out to something else that happens. So how do we work with that information, not to keep us stuck, but to identify what is the best path for movement, for moving forward? And we know a really good path for trauma resolution is not just talk therapy. It's not to diminish that, but there's also a reason why for talk therapy, there's been more of a shift to incorporate movement-based activities,
Mhm.
because movement is incredibly powerful. And that's what I've experienced myself. A lot of people who I've worked with have as well. And so sometimes they're very clear, like, yes, I remember the traumatic event I had at the age of 10. Other times
Mhm.
it's this general understanding. And I think of trauma as on a huge spectrum, all the way from everyday stressors that you may experience to those, what we used to call big T events, where people are like, yes, that's definitely a traumatic episode or event that occurred. And yet the nervous system, your automatic nervous system, responds in very similar ways, no matter if you're sitting in traffic and really frustrated because of that, or a traumatic event occurs. And so something that I was just doing for continuing education when it comes to trauma, someone I was working with said, I'm starting to call my work resilience-based training, because that's really what it is when someone can identify, I'm not feeling in touch anymore, I need to do something a little bit different. Being able to make that shift can lead towards more empowerment and resilience, which is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. You said so many important things there. So I'm making notes. I want to go back and revisit them. First of all, something that you said that I think is so important is you talked about, your body giving you clues, feeling a little tight, feeling a little pain. So many times we treat that as like, oh, my body's failing me. No, that's a clue. That's
Mm.
letting you know what it needs, what needs to be adjusted. It's trying to help you out. So I wanted to point that out. Also, we have to be really careful that we don't compare traumas, that we don't compare experiences and minimize our own or somebody else's. Because you said something so important. Nervous system doesn't differentiate whether you're running down the road from the bear or whether you're stuck in traffic and can't get to pick up your kid in time. It treats it all in the same basket. And so it's so important to remember that to not minimize or compare or feel guilty about having to move through something because you've decided in your head or someone else has told you that yours wasn't serious enough to need that kind of attention. We have to quit doing that to ourselves and to other people and listen to our bodies and pay attention to whatever it is and however it was processed and acknowledge it. Don't shame it and move through it. And I love this piece because I've worked in therapy a lot, and talk therapy can take you to a point of naming something and acknowledge it, but you still got to move it through. And my therapist has always been really good about like, you got some anger stored up there. You might want to try some boxing or hitting a pillow against a wall this week, or some really intense hit workout, or something that's going to move that out. Or you might feel really exhausted today after what we uncovered in EMDR. You may need to stretch. You might need a nap. You might need some Pilates. And I use Pilates, yoga, HIIT, weights. I use it all. It's all part of my regimen because my body, it's part of my menu. I'm going to borrow that from Christelle Court, who's been a guest with us in the past, because my body needs access to all of that depending on what it is. And so I love this trauma-informed approach and this holistic approach of, yes, the physical movement is good for the physical body, but there's other areas that can help too if you acknowledge those and are aware of those and are present within that. So thank you so much for all that. So good. How we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. Your work is really a part of that, of showing up. This is a tool you can use. When did you shift from, this is a tool I can use for myself, to, hey, this is a tool I can help others with as well?
I think it was as I was teaching Pilates and starting, I've been teaching Pilates for 20 years. So quite a long time now.
Yeah.
Different stages of teaching, as one might expect from being in the field for so long.
Yeah.
And as I started teaching more with an understanding of nervous system and the rhythms that I was experiencing and those people who I was teaching experiencing, I made shifts. And I think what was really powerful was I was working at the university when this was occurring. And so it was very clear to see the cycles compared to the cycles that I saw in a Pilates studio were really dependent upon individual factors, which I don't want to discount, but it didn't give me a lot of information at one time. Whereas when I'm on the university 40 hours a week, from staff to administrators to students, there were times where it was, this is really great, like we're just getting things started, to, oh my gosh, I'm getting overwhelmed, like those midterm final periods. They realized that people's energy just naturally shifted. And you can tell that the moment they walked into the class. So many times we can tell that from people who we know really well. When they walk into the space, we know it's a good day, something's going on. And we address it before they even talk to us. And it's interesting because sometimes we tune into that more with other people than really are ourselves, and, having self-reflection.
Isn't that true? It's like,
it really is. I think
everybody else these questions. Have you asked yourself that lately?
So as I started just teaching more, it became evident that I wanted to bring Pilates in this way to even more people. That's why I left the Pilates studio and worked at the university, because I realized the people who I was working with at the university, I wasn't seeing them in the Pilates studio. And so I wanted to bring Pilates to more people. And for 7 years, it was through the university setting. And then it became, where am I actually fitting in Pilates is at my own home still. That's been my consistent mainstay. And now I can just layer on some other elements, whether people are Pilates movers or they want to try Pilates for the first time and want to understand that foundational approach with yet compassion and a lot of autonomy of when you're moving, all the way through professional development that we have as well. So I really just wanted to bring Pilates to more people because it is so amazing. And we know as we get older, there's like a lot of myths, like we're not going to feel good as we get older. And for a lot of people who work with me, it's the opposite, that they've maybe started to experience that. And then they start Pilates and they establish that strong foundation, that consistency. Consistent is not the same thing as constant. So it doesn't mean the same workouts, a set length of time. There's that adaptability in there. They're noticing they're feeling better. And beyond that, people email me on a regular basis, like, my bone density has improved. I don't have to do my knee surgery anymore. My back doesn't bother me in the middle of the night. All of these factors simply by moving the body. And I use the word simply because sometimes we want to overcomplicate it, especially in the fitness. And also I would say in the nutrition space, what we're eating, trends tend to take over. And someone just reached out to me like, I like working with you because you don't follow the trends. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that, because then the pendulum just shifts.
Oh
and
yeah,
as an
it's
example,
a moving target all the time.
Yeah. And it always feels like, oh, I have to do that program. I have to do more. So I like to step back and what is that more well-rounded approach? When do we lean into one side of fitness compared to the other? When are those opportunities that you're taking for longer rest periods that are absolutely essential? And for some reason, not a lot of people in fitness are talking about this. I'm not just talking about a rest day or two during the week. I'm talking 1 or 2 weeks every few months. You're taking time off as a major reset. And people have found this to be really incredible rather than chasing it. So for those of us over 40, what I've noticed is that at first it was, just ditch the cardio and focus on strengthening workouts. Well, now people are getting injured because they're just focusing on strength. And now mobility is up on the rise. Mobility is amazing. Pilates is amazing for mobility. But it's not just that. And so I really like to lean into what is the well-rounded routine for physical considerations. How do we make adjustments? And it's, as an example, someone within the membership was saying, I want to get into more strength classes, but there's not very many. And sometimes we're a little bit faster. And it led me to create a mindful strength class, which is very slow, a little bit more intentional, so people can really tune in. And for a lot of people, that's turned into a favorite class. And from there, we've done other sessions like it, because it gives people the opportunity to see, like, is this amount of resistance good? Do I need to adjust? How's the alignment? And all of these things are helpful no matter if someone's just starting out or if they've been moving with Pilates or workouts for many years.
Yeah, I love the choices. I love the menu of options. I love the addressing of the mindfulness, the strength, the agility, the balance. I mean, there's so many pieces that Pilates addresses, all of those different pieces, and they're all things that we need. We don't need, I think sometimes we just move one way. For years, I just ran or I just walked. And that served me for a time, but then it got to a time, it's like that natural muscle that was always there when I was a competitive track runner, all of a sudden my body's getting older. It's not metabolizing things the same way. And I'm not building muscle as easily as I used to. And I'm really having to pay attention to my macros and whole foods that I put into my body more intentionally. And so, just having those options, meeting people where they are, you give people options to do it at home. You give them different options within that. It's so important. And another piece too that I want to touch on before we move on to the next thing, and we talked about this in the radio show episode, but this is an important part of the trauma piece, is feeling safe in the environment, in the space. Can you address the safety issue a little bit too?
Yeah, I think whenever we work out, for some people, you've maybe always had a really positive experience with working out. You don't care where you work out. Well, that's not the reality for a lot of people who I've worked with. I know that there's just a lot of judgment sometimes, or we feel like there's a lot of judgment when we go into a new space. And so I think this is one of the values of smaller spaces, whether it's a small gym or Pilates studio. I know some people love those settings. Other people love big group classes. And for other people, none of that is their jam and they want to move at home. That just
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
more sense from logistics, and they just feel safer to do that. And
Yeah.
so I find even if someone's going to a studio, even if someone's going to a gym, that home practice is really helpful, whether it's some bedtime stretches or you just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't make it to that class today, but you have a backup plan that you can use. And so I think there's the physical element, like how do we feel in the actual environment? And I'll
Yeah.
never forget how disheartened I was when someone came to the membership the first time and she sent me an email after being in there for a few months and said, "Thank you so much for offering this. I was moving for 3 years with a personal trainer because my doctor said I had to do that in order to get better with what I was recovering from. And every day I would go home and cry. And
Oh.
now since joining this, I'm no longer doing that, but I'm making more progress. So if every time after workout, we're
Mm.
not feeling good, we're overly sore. I mean, there's a right amount of soreness.
Yeah.
I think that we just need to evaluate. It's that no pain, no gain mentality. Like we have to
Yeah.
do it just the one way. And there's still a lot of people who may teach in that way. But what I'm really excited about is more people having this understanding of options. How are
Yeah.
we creating that environment of empowerment? And with this, sometimes, and it may be for those of you who are more type A, tell me the right way. You're going to want, well, what is the one right path? And I'll say
Mm-hmm.
the one right path is the one that's right for you right now. And I can
Yeah.
give you a few options, but I can't tell you exactly what that is all the time.
Yeah.
And so it takes, I think, a little bit more exploring, a little bit more being open for the journey rather than just this one way. However, for people who go down it, well, some people just are like, yes, I love this. And for people who are like, I'm not sure about this, in the end, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm so much more motivated to work out because I'm not just like struggling through it and hurting myself. I'm enjoying it and making more progress. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that brings us back to, and we can tie this back to the self-care pieces. It's not a one-stop shop for everybody. You got to really get curious within yourself, meet your body where it is. I do a lot of journaling that I kind of where I'll track how I'm feeling each day, or I'll track what, the kind of movements I'm incorporating to help me kind of see patterns in what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, where do I need to meet myself, but staying curious, having that thing you do, having that thing that you resonate with, but if all of a sudden it's not feeling the same, or you're not feeling, you know, as good afterwards, or you're getting bored or whatever it is, get curious about where else you can explore it. And that's the great thing about options and choices. But back to that safety piece, it's really hard to open your mind up to all the aspects you can gain from this workout if you're feeling tentative, if you aren't feeling safe. And so always keeping that in mind as well. So thank you for all of that. I am a home workout person. I have been ever since. I haven't worked out in a gym other than real sporadically. A few times I tried it again and I just didn't like it, other than before I had kids. It's easier for me. I like having it at home. I just have always liked that. And so even if you are a person that likes to you need to get out and you want to be with your people and do it, it's still having those things you can do at home to stretch a little more, to get yourself ready for bed, to wake yourself up in the morning. I think it just gives you another thing in your menu to have access to. Thank you for all of that. So good. Um, the importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in everything you do. And just
Mm.
talk to me about that, how that helps you keep focused on how you show up work wise, but also how you show up in your relationships, where you give your time to. This ties in a lot too with boundaries and communication. So talk to me about your why and values journey.
My why is for myself. My why is my family, 100%. I
Hmm.
realized a long time ago, if I did not have a consistent workout routine with a lot of flexibility in there, that I just wasn't as pleasant of a person to be around. So it helps to regulate my nervous system. It's 100% my family because I want to be here as long as I can and feel as good as I can. We love going hiking and camping and exploring. And let me tell you, some of those hikes are quite challenging. So,
Yeah.
being more physically ready for them helps me enjoy it more. There was one season, I think it was perhaps around the time when I was working full time and trying to start up the business of Trifecta Pilates, that my
Mm.
consistency declined a little bit because I was staying up till like 3 o'clock in the morning a lot of times because I have
Mm.
both of these. And that summer was very hard for me to do hikes. I remember thinking, like, walking up this steep incline that we have done so many times, like, I I can, struggling and struggling. And I don't like to struggle that much when it comes to hiking.
Yeah.
I can be challenged, but I want to also feel like, yeah, I got this. So
Yeah.
there's that element. And for people who I work with, it really is just sharing the beauty of movement, how it can help us recover from whether
Yeah.
it's injury, illness, or just being sedentary for a length of time. Like we haven't worked out in a really long time. There's going to
Yeah.
be like a learning curve to get back to working out again, moving our body. And I think giving ourselves the time and grace to do that is really important. And there's a teaching element, I would say, as well, beyond just the workouts of what we've been focusing on today as well. In the beginning, I found for a lot of people, what's helpful is I'm going to stick to the foundations program, really follow that, like get that good baseline structure. And that works for a certain length of time for each person's individual. For some people, like, the first month, and then they're wanting to adapt more. For other people, it could be, they'll work through that program and then another and then another. Yet there comes this turning point where they start trusting in themselves more, leaning into what's going to be most beneficial for them. And it's like when someone sent me an email recently and said, I'm sending you this from my back porch. I would have never given myself time to enjoy the house that we built because I
Mm.
wanted to be in this space. Like I was always trying to hustle and grind for workouts and they weren't feeling good. They weren't enjoyable. And now not only are my workouts enjoyable, but I don't have to do them all the time. I know when enough is enough and I
Mm.
can enjoy being in the present, watching the sunset. And that
Oh,
is like,
wow.
yes, that was her why. For someone else, maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah. I love how you were able to merge those. And that's so powerful when you hear that and just reinforces like, yeah, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. And this is not only am I winning, but the people I'm working with are winning too. So good. I love that so much. Thank you for that. Um, Living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Mm. Yeah, it is a lot of what we should do. You
Yeah.
should do this, you should do that. And pretty much my entire life, I feel like I've had a slightly different perspective and I've gone against the grain. So I've had a lot of stumbles, especially when I was younger. Like sometimes when you're passionate about doing something in a different way, people take that as intense. So I've had over the
Mm.
course of my lifespan up until this point, knowing that there's many paths to the
Mhm.
same route. And if people resonate with what I'm doing, well, amazing, come on in. But if Pilates or the way I teach isn't their jam, that's okay. That's why there's a lot of different ways in which we can
Yeah.
work out. There's a lot of different ways for self-care. There's a lot of different Pilates teachers. And I always say, if you don't like moving your body with Pilates, try a different teacher. If you've tried 10 teachers and you still don't like Pilates, it's not for you right now. Try something else. Don't let one or many negative experiences or ones that you didn't enjoy, maybe they're not negative, but you're like, no, not really my thing, turn you off from it forever. As an
Yeah.
example, the first time I tried yoga, it was at the same time I tried Pilates. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I didn't go back to it for over 10 years. And it was because I thought that's yoga. one way that teacher taught, and I was with her for a few months because it was a university class, like that's what yoga is. Well, there's a lot of different ways in which yoga is taught. And it was years and years later, I came back to it. And what I've realized is sometimes I want to do yoga, and other times I'm like, no, I'm going to stick with other elements. And so I think it's understanding for each one of us as an individual, like what is our passion, what do we enjoy doing, and not letting other people's expectations really overshadow our own. And I think it also goes back into the boundaries piece. And that's one element I believe that as we get older, we can lean into that more, I would say, with kindness and compassion rather than like, this is just how I am. No, like, this is how I am. And here's why. For me, it's like, here are your alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like the way you explained that. And I do think that time and experience do help you in how you communicate that, especially as you get, especially I think when you're younger and you're trying to carve a different path for yourself that maybe was different than the one you grew up with for whatever reason in whatever area. You sometimes feel like you got to lay that ironclad thing so you can be very clear that you're going to do it different than the rest. And it can come off as really intense sometimes when your intention is just to communicate that you're doing something differently. And as you get older, you're like, okay, there's a way I can do this that can be a little bit of a softer approach that might not feel so in your face, but still communicates and conveys the same message. And so I can completely relate to that because that is me in a nutshell. I totally relate to that. So yeah, so don't worry, ladies. We learn, we grow. But that doesn't mean we stop communicating and sharing those things and living by those things that we know are best and healthiest for us. So thank you for all of that. So good. All right, talk to me about accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. You've had different things happen in life that that weren't exactly welcome, but you had to navigate them, and then you were able to move through and have different experiences. And I think sometimes we want to shove down and hide away the parts that we didn't love so much and not acknowledge them. And this goes directly into the work you do. If you do that, it's going to show up in some other way. It's got to be moved through. It's got to be processed in some way. We can't just push it away in the corner and expect it just to be gone. So talk to me, because the layers experience really shows up in your work and what you try and help other people with as well. So talk to me about that part of this for your journey.
Yeah, I believe it comes from, when we're starting something out, it has one element that's like our hook, why we want to keep moving with it. It's kind of like reading a good book. Sometimes it just hooks us in right away. And then there's like other things that come in. There's that plot twist, right? And you keep reading and it keeps layering and layering. And that's what inevitably happens as we're moving, whether it's on the mat or off, is that we're going to have a plot twist. And I found that a lot of times we're not accepting of this and we try to push it away rather than what makes sense for us right now. And it's almost like there's fear behind it. If we accept our current reality, it means that we have to stay here. But I found the opposite is true. With acceptance, then we can embrace what is going to be most beneficial right now for that next day, for the next week, rather than make it a workout specific example, coming back to the mat or coming back to running after some time off and doing a very long and very intense session, and you don't feel good all the next day, maybe setting yourself up for injury or re-injury. Well, accepting, I'm just coming back after an extended time period off. What can I do in this point in time is really, really important. I was reminded of this. I had a major ankle sprain when we traveled to Alaska in the silliest of ways, which I won't get into right now. And it took me months, I won't even say weeks, months to heal. When we came back, went to the doctor. Oh, like a week or two, you're going to wake up and be like, that was I don't even remember that. It was not a week or two later. In fact, I'm still sensing okay, something it's not quite right. I had anticipated that I was going to start running, 2 months after a trip. Well,
Mm.
that's off the board. And what I think I also had to accept is just let it run through me, the disappointment, the frustration, and not try
Mm.
to push it away too soon and not try to hold on to it. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm really frustrated this happened. This is really disappointing. It certainly didn't feel good. And then what happens is we get this glimmer of things are better, and we try to jump back to where we were. And then it reminds us, you aren't there yet. So I
Yeah.
encourage us to find that acceptance, take it slow. And if you jump forward a few steps like I did with trying to recover from my ankle injury, just use it as, okay, I just need to turn back that dial a little bit.
Yeah, such good advice and really can be used in so many facets of our lives. We have this in this grind society we live in. We are, and you talked about this earlier, taking time off. We're afraid to rest. We're afraid that if we rest, we'll just lose everything or something will go awry or all these things when we need rest. Our bodies and our minds and our spirits need rest. It needs time to recover. We need time to recuperate. And also, it's okay to ease yourself back into things. And we set these unrealistic expectations for ourselves. Talk about setting expectations. Sometimes we set some unrealistic ones and we set ourselves up for disappointment rather than just okay, I'm gonna meet myself where I'm at, gonna test this out today, gonna try this out and see how it goes rather than pushing too hard and seeing it as a failure, quote unquote. It's no, it's just your body letting you know it's not quite ready for that yet. And guess what? Rest is okay. And there's other ways we can feed ourselves in ways that are beneficial, even if it's not that particular way of movement. Maybe you can incorporate some meditation and some quiet time to really relax your body and release the tension because our bodies heal better when they're rested, relaxed, and not tense. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I think we can employ that thought process to all different parts of our lives, whether it's physically or mentally and emotionally too. So thank you for that. So good. All right. In summary, in living out feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me about how that's impacted your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with other people.
I think with myself, from a physical perspective, the pressure is off of the
Mm.
changes that naturally occur in my body as I'm getting older. Does this mean that maybe there will be a pendulum shift and my body will change a different way? Yes, but I found, especially for women 40 and over, we're trying to hang on to that when we're 20, when we're 30. We're just in a different life stage. It would be like a 20-year-old saying they wanted their 10-year-old body. That is not healthy. Our bodies continue
So
to
true.
change. So I think it's just embracing that those physical changes will occur, and something that I play with, because we have, or I have anyways, experienced shame in the past for reacting a certain way or doing things a certain way, that now that I know better, it's oh, I would never do that. Or even to this day, something really activated me, and my stress response cycle kicked in, my trauma response cycle kicked in, and I was reacting rather than responding. Well, now I can lead with more compassion for my past self.
Mm.
And even when it still happens today, and I can layer on with, well, how can I mitigate that in the future?
Yeah.
Was there a signal that my pot was filling up too much, or did I just need to take a break? What are the extenuating circumstances that I do have control over, because I don't have control over everything? And this is something I feel like that I've been really embracing, both in my personal life, in my practice on the mat as well. And it's interesting because sometimes people can't necessarily put a finger on it, but they know that something's different. Someone who I was working with I would go in and teach a Pilates class for her academic class once a semester. She saw me kind of through this transition. And it was after one of our sessions, she goes, I don't know what's different, but you're teaching in a different way. She's like, and I can't explain what it is because you're still teaching a Pilates class. Like I'm still seeing the same exercises that we've done before, but how you're doing it is much different. And I think it's just layering on not only Pilates for the sake of physical well-being, but so much more as well. And it's been a really powerful experience for myself and others.
Yeah. And then, when you were able to do that, you said some important things about, and I talk about this a lot, of being curious rather than judgmental. When you look back at those ways that you responded, reacted, that you didn't love, okay, what was happening during that moment in time? What are the things that contributed to that can it kind of have helped you get an understanding and acknowledgement, so that you're like, oh, okay, I wouldn't do that again, but I understand how I got there. Okay, moving forward, I know this about myself. That changes the complete dynamic in how you approach it and look at it. When you approach it with that curiosity rather than judgment, it also impacts the way you show up for other people. That example of how you were teaching differently and how that person noticed that is the perfect example of how when you were able to unpack that in a healthy way, with compassion, with kindness, without judgment, that informed how you were able to show up differently, better, more holistically for other people. So, I mean, I think there's and we are so quick to judge ourselves. And that's something I've had to learn the last 5 years, really. I mean, I'm 55. I totally know what you're talking about. You get to a certain point. I mean, when I got to 45, my metabolism crashed. I was like, what is this? What is happening? I had a really pretty racing metabolism most of my life. Going back to, I started running when I was 12. I was an active runner for years. I ran half marathons in my 30s, all these different things. And so I was kind of just used to my body being a certain way. And all of a sudden it shifted, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? My body's falling apart and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, new season. Let's take a look at this. And, so how you approach yourself, and really asking myself, okay, would I say that to a friend in that way, or my daughter, or, that kind of a thing. But really pulling back and being resistant to being so hard on ourselves. And getting curious piece. I think that's so powerful. And and we don't even realize it sometimes until somebody points it out to us, the impact that it makes.
Yeah. And I love that example, which is one I like to use as well. Like, would you say that to a friend to encourage them when they're, struggling with something, or just something new is occurring? Would you say that to your child? And more often than not, the answer is, of course not. And yet that's a narrative so often we have in our minds. And so treating ourselves with kindness, it takes that observation of, oh, wait, I'm going down a path that I do not want to be going down. Let's put a pause in that. And what's the other side? How would I support someone else? And if you can treat yourself with that own kindness, that's a beautiful gift for your well-being and others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It generates out to everyone, not just you. 100%. All right. We are winding up here. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
5 activities that nourish me. One has to be getting outside and going on a walk. I have been embracing the cold weather when it's cold season here in Colorado. I would have never said that a long time ago, but just getting outside is always amazing. Number 2 is getting on the Pilates mat and moving with a very traditional class, no equipment. Sometimes it's 30 minutes fast in a tent. Other times it's just 5 exercises done very slowly, almost like a moving meditation. Number 3 would have to be vagal toning activities that I do. I tend to do those as part of my evening unwind routine with skincare and oils. And so again, sometimes it's like all the way like neck rolls and shoulder rolls and, movements with face and then gently rubbing fingers across face. And other times it's like 1 or 2 of those and that's it.
Yeah.
Number 4, right? Like it goes into what do you need that night? Number
Exactly.
4 would be journaling. I am not like you, where I'm not as a consistent of a journaler. However, when I journal, I find it to be incredibly helpful. And I play with merging that with a stretching routine, usually, and or meditation. So sometimes I do it after, sometimes I do it before. And I incorporate that into my evening routine, which I don't do every single night. I found that's too unrealistic for me. But most nights of the week is really, really helpful. And number 5 is slowing down, putting a pause on the next, and being present for other people. And for me, that is actually very challenging because I just want to get stuff done. That's like my natural brain is like next. I'm forward thinking. But I found like being present is the most beautiful gift you can give to those that you love.
Absolutely.
And for yourself.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to sit with that last one a minute because I understand what you mean. I love a good checkbox and checking something off. I get a little bit of a buzz from that, but also it has impaired me in ways where I'm not always a great listener to those that I love. To my husband, my children, and so I like hear something and I want to go fix it, or I'm listening to something and I'm planning my response instead of just sitting and listening. And that's something that I've had to really work on, but it's so empowering and can lead to such great connections and trust that your loved ones know that when they're with you, that you are with them, that you are present, that they are seen and heard in that moment. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. I get that, like we want things checked off and off, but that's one that like you, I struggle with. And so I think that most people will struggle with that. Just we're connected with what happens next, with social media, with, the news. And so having that detached away, I found is incredibly powerful. I think it's one of the reasons why, referencing back to very earlier on in their conversation, that all-inclusive was so amazing because we did not have internet, was not focusing on the next. And so that's one strategy that we can implement in smaller ways in our real everyday life.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Yeah, I've learned to implement times where I'm just off social media. I'm off things. There's times in my day after 8 o'clock, I'm off. I'm not on anymore after 8 o'clock. On the weekends, after 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, I really try not to be on. And sometimes I'll build bigger ones. If I feel like I'm pushing, a little hard, I'll let my team know I'm not on at all this weekend, or we're going to take this 2-week period and I will not be on from this point to this point. And that has come by me just really paying attention to, again, learning to listen to those cues our bodies are giving us, looking how, am I getting irritable too easy? Am I, all those little things that come up that inform where we need to put those spaces in. When my husband's home or when I'm home with him, when we're together, are we present? Are we connecting? How can we do that better with our kids are visiting, all those kinds of things. So yeah, be knowing when to put those pauses in and really create space to be present and with the people. Because really at the end of the day, we just want to be known, seen, and heard by those that we love. So, and we don't want to just receive that ourselves. We want to be able to give that too. So thank you for that. So good. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
How I want to feel in the next 6 months. Number one has to be energetic or energized. And it ties back into that self-care routine for sure, is the way that I personally achieve that, not through caffeine.
Yeah.
Number two is, is for feel would have to be supported. Feel supported.
Mm.
Number three would be feel understood.
Mm.
Feel understood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was number three, right? So now number four. Number four would be feeling good. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
see this often when I'm teaching. You want to feel good. Even when I'm doing something really challenging, I still know it's good for me. I'm maybe pushing, but not
Mm-hmm.
pushing beyond. So feeling good.
Yeah.
And number five is feeling light. And feeling light to
Mm.
me is, not a lot of stress, bringing that joy. So just feeling light.
Yeah, I love those. So good. All right. Beth, tell people where they can find you and follow you. Don't worry, listeners. This will be on our resources page at embracinglayers.com, where we're also going to connect our radio show conversation that we had with Beth last spring. So that you can listen to that as well, because we really get into the nuts and bolts of what her Pilates looks like within the trauma space, the physical space. We really take a deep dive into that. It's a great resource. But real quick, Beth, let people know where it is they can find you and learn more from you.
The best way is at trifectapilates.com through the website. But if you're on the socials, you'll find me at Trifecta Pilates there as well. The two best places for that are either YouTube or Instagram.
Okay, great. Beth, thank you so much for your time today. I always enjoy our conversations, and I love this approach that you take, this holistic approach, because so many times with our health, we are just we micro it down to just certain things, and it really is a full package of things. And this, you provide such a great resource and way to address all of those things and not have one get put on the back burner or left behind. And it's so doable. I mean, you meet people where they are with multiple ways to approach this. And it's just such a valuable resource for our listeners to have. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for how you show up in the world and what you do. I really appreciate it.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me on, Melissa. It's so fabulous to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, ladies, take care of yourselves this week, and be easy on yourselves. Meet yourself where you are. What's something you can do for yourself that feels good, where you can also incorporate some presence, some mindfulness, some kindness, some movement. And it's okay if you don't feel like your 20-year-old self, that you're not supposed to. As much as sometimes we think we want to go back to that time in some ways, when I look back, I'm like, oh, there's no way I'd go back to my 20-year-old self now. All the things I've learned since then, I'm good. Thank you very much. But be kind to yourselves this week. And we hope that you will take the time to take a look at Beth's resources, some great resources there. Again, go to embracinglayers.com to our resources page for that. Take good care of yourselves and have a great week. Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the Feel podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. And engage with this framework in written form with your journal or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We Feel women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you and having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.